Hey, y'all, check this out. Two Ukrainian minehunters may join the fight in the Strait of Hormuz. A navy in exile that lost its home port may now be preparing to operate in the Persian Gulf, 4,000 miles from the front lines in Ukraine. And the reason why tells you a lot more about Ukrainian strategy than any tank delivery ever has. Hey friends, Wes O'Donnell here. Welcome back to the channel. Former Army infantry, former Air Force AWACS, current journalist who spends way too much time reading ship schematics so you don't have to. And Ukraine didn't conjure these vessels out of nowhere. They've been sitting in British waters since the early weeks of the full-scale invasion, quietly training with the Royal Navy, quietly integrating into NATO maritime networks, and quietly waiting for a moment exactly like this one. There are two classes involved, and they're worth knowing. The first pair are Sandown-class minehunters, ex-Royal Navy vessels now sailing under Ukrainian colors as Cherkasky and Chernihiv. These are single-role minehunters, meaning the entire ship is engineered around one job: find the mine, identify the mine, kill the mine. Don't bother asking them to do anything else. The hull is fiberglass and non-magnetic. A steel hull generates a magnetic signature that pressure-sensitive mines use to trigger detonation. Fiberglass means the ship can hover directly above a mine without the mine knowing it's there. Beneath the hull, the Sandown carries a Type 2093 variable depth sonar, a transducer array that's lowered on a cable to depths of up to 200 meters, where it gets below the thermocline and scans the seabed with a clarity that surface sonar can't match. The data comes back through fiber optic cable to the ops room, where the picture builds in real time. And to hold that position over a target in a ripping tidal current, which Hormuz absolutely has, the Sandown uses Voith Schneider cycloidal propellers. Instead of a fixed-pitch screw, these use rotating vertical blades whose angle of attack can be adjusted continuously in any direction, with almost no lag. You can point the thrust straight sideways if you need to. The ship doesn't move. Now that's huge when you're trying to guide an ROV to within centimeters of a contact on the bottom. The second class is the Tripartite Minehunter, Dutch-built, NATO standard, and known in Ukrainian service as the Mariupol and the Melitopol, with a third hull, Henishek, reportedly nearing readiness. Now, where the Sandown is purely British in its design philosophy, robust, straightforward, purpose-built, the Tripartite is a European consortium product. Propulsion is a diesel-electric hybrid. The diesel gets you to the hunting ground, and you switch to battery-powered electric motors for the actual hunt. That's a big deal because electric motors don't transmit vibration into the water column the way a diesel does. Sonar hears the difference. So does a mine with an acoustic fuse. The Tripartite's principal weapon is the Double Eagle Mark III, an ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, that swims down to a contact, stares at it with cameras and sonar, and sends back enough imagery for a human operator to make a positive ID. When the classification comes back, yes, that is in fact a mine and not a World War II anchor chain, the ROV deploys a Seafox disposal vehicle. The Seafox is essentially a torpedo with a shaped charge designed to detonate directly against the mine's casing. Sympathetic detonation, one mine gone. Shipping lane a little safer. Crew heartbeat returned to something approaching normal. So, two ship classes, different strengths, same job. One of the most dangerous jobs in naval warfare, by the way. So how did Ukraine's navy end up in Britain in the first place? Well, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February of 2022, Moscow's Black Sea Fleet had an enormous structural advantage. They owned Sevastopol, one of the finest naval harbors in the Black Sea, and a naval base with infrastructure going back to the Tsars. They had cruisers, they had frigates, they had submarines, and landing ships in numbers that completely outclassed anything Ukraine had afloat at the time. In the early hours of the war, they pushed west, seized Snake Island, and looked very much like a fleet that was about to establish sea control over Ukraine's entire southern coastline. And then Ukraine did something unexpected. Rather than try to fight the Black Sea Fleet conventionally, which would have been short and probably pretty one-sided at the time, Kyiv went for naval denial. Homemade surface drone boats, loaded with explosives and guided by commercial satellite imagery, started hunting the Russian fleet at anchor. Neptune anti-ship missiles, developed domestically and derided by skeptics right up until they weren't, struck the Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, and sent it to the bottom in April of 2022. Longtime viewers and members, you have definitely heard this joke, but for my new folks out there, why does the new Russian Navy have glass-bottomed boats? So they can see the old Russian Navy. Yeah, I know.
Hilarious.
I know. So good. So the Russian fleet didn't collapse, but it did retreat, and it stayed retreated. The problem for Ukraine's conventional surface vessels was the Montreux Convention. Under the treaty that governs transit through the Turkish Straits, warships belonging to a belligerent power cannot pass through the Bosphorus during wartime. Turkey enforced it, rightly or wrongly. That meant Ukrainian naval vessels already in the Black Sea could not leave, and Ukrainian naval vessels already outside could not return. So the Sandown and the Tripartite hulls were already abroad, in Britain for training, cooperation exercises, and NATO integration work that had been accelerating since 2014. The Montreux Convention meant they couldn't come home. But rather than dock them indefinitely in Portsmouth, England, Kyiv accepted London's offer to keep training, keep integrating, keep the crews sharp and the systems current. Well, that patience is about to pay a strategic dividend. Now, I didn't serve in the maritime world. My background is Army infantry and Air Force ISR, not swabbing decks. But one of the things you absorb in any combined arms environment is a deep and abiding respect for the people who do mine warfare, because it is genuinely, systematically terrifying in ways that's hard to convey from the outside. Mine clearance operations move at speeds that would bore any combat pilot to tears. 7 knots on a good day. Constant stops to prosecute contacts. Every sweeping hour is an exercise in disciplined attention, because the consequence of inattention isn't a missed target in a distant field, it's your ship. The crews that do this work are not adrenaline junkies. They're the opposite. They're methodical, patient, technically fluent, and accustomed to operating in environments where the threat is invisible until the moment it isn't. Ukrainian mine warfare crews have been doing this, drilling it, living it, while caliber missiles flew overhead and their country burned. That forged something, and it's relevant to what comes next. Ukraine appears ready to put its Portsmouth-based minehunters, including Cherkasky and Chernihiv, on the table for a possible Hormuz mission. That's significant, but as of now, public reporting supports possible deployment, not ships underway to the Gulf. It's a big difference. One is planning, the other is steel moving through the water. But here's where it gets genuinely novel historically. Mine clearance in contested straits has been a great power activity. You needed dedicated hulls, specialist training pipelines, and the political standing to show up in someone else's maritime neighborhood without everyone treating you as a threat. That combination, capability plus credibility, was effectively gated to a small number of NATO navies and a few regional powers. What Ukraine is demonstrating is that a middle power navy can punch into that category without any traditional prerequisites. No carrier group, no surface combatants, no regional basing history, just 2 non-magnetic fiberglass ships, crews who've been training continuously for 3 years, and a strategic calculation that showing up matters more than staying home. That's a category shift. Ukraine isn't asking to be treated as a great power navy, it's carving out a niche where it becomes the navy you call when someone salts a choke point with cheap, deniable mines, which, as it happens, is exactly the threat profile that keeps defense planners up at night from Hormuz to the Taiwan Strait. The proliferation of small, cheap, commercially available naval mines, the kind that Iran manufactures, that Houthi-adjacent networks could acquire, that any number of non-state actors could lay from a fishing dhow at 2 in the morning, has been running ahead of the clearance capacity that exists to answer them. Ukraine just volunteered to help close that gap, and if they do it well, that brand equity translates. Partner navies that trusted Ukraine with their mine clearance gear start thinking differently about what else they might provide. Frigates, unmanned surface vehicles, coastal defense systems. The ask gets easier when the track record is real. So here's the takeaway. Ukraine went into this war with a navy that was smaller, older, and outgunned by every metric that traditional naval analysis uses. It lost its home port. It lost its flagship. It watched its conventional surface assets get trapped behind a legal instrument written in 1936. And it responded by becoming exactly the kind of navy that the current threat environment actually needs. Cheap, lethal, creative, and now deployable beyond its own region. 2 minehunters leaving British waters for the Persian Gulf is not a headline about a navy desperate to justify its existence. It's a headline about a navy that figured out what it was actually good for and decided the world should know also. Small ships, slow speeds, exactly zero margin for error, and somehow, against all of it, still hunting. All right, that's the breakdown. If you want to support the channel and keep this kind of analysis going, membership is about $3 a month. Straightforward, no algorithm tricks, just back into work directly. If you're not there yet, no worries, just hit subscribe so you catch the next one as this situation develops. And if you want a deeper read, longer analysis, the stuff that doesn't fit into a little YouTube window, well, I am on Substack. I'll throw that QR code up on the screen, or just go to wesodonnell.com. That takes you right to my Substack. I appreciate you being here, and as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.